You know, they say you never really know someone until they show you who they truly are. I learned that lesson the hardest way possible when I returned from what was supposed to be a relaxing vacation in Colorado. There I was, standing on my own driveway with my luggage, watching a complete stranger tell me that my penthouse, the home I'd owned for over 20 years, was now his. My daughter had sold it. And when I called her, desperate for answers, she laughed at me. Actually laughed. "You're basically homeless now, Mom," she said. But here's what Jennifer didn't know. What she couldn't have known. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Before I tell you what happened next, I'd love to know, where are you watching this from right now? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button, share it with someone who might relate, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Now, back to 3 weeks before everything fell apart. I was sitting on the balcony of a cozy cabin rental in the Colorado mountains, wrapped in a soft blanket, watching the sun dip behind the peaks. The air was cool and clean, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe. No phone calls, no obligations. Just me, a good book, and the sound of the wind rustling through the pine trees. I'm 72 years old, and I'd spent the better part of my life working myself to the bone. Started as a secretary in a law firm back in the 70s, worked my way up to office manager, then eventually became a paralegal. Every promotion was hard-won. Every dollar I earned went toward building a life I could be proud of. By the time I retired, I'd saved enough to buy that penthouse outright, no mortgage, no debt. It was mine. 23 years I lived there. 23 years of memories. I could tell you about every corner of that place. The way the morning light would stream through the floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room, the little reading nook I'd set up by the fireplace where I'd spend my evenings with a cup of tea, the guest bedroom where my daughter Jennifer used to stay when she'd visit back when she actually visited. That penthouse wasn't just a home. It was proof that I'd made it. Proof that a woman who started with nothing could build something solid and lasting. But lately, I'd been feeling tired. Not just physically tired, though my knees weren't what they used to be, but mentally exhausted. My daughter had been calling more frequently, always with some new drama. Her husband Michael's business wasn't doing well. They were stressed about money. Could I help them out? Just a loan, Mom. Just until they got back on their feet. I'd helped before. A few thousand here and there over the years. But it never seemed to be enough. There was always another crisis, another emergency. And Jennifer, she'd changed. Or maybe I just finally started seeing her clearly. She wasn't the little girl who used to bring me dandelions from the yard anymore. She was a grown woman with her own family, her own problems. And increasingly, she seemed to view me as a solution to those problems, rather than as her mother. That's why I booked the Colorado trip. I needed distance. I needed to clear my head and figure out how to set boundaries with my own daughter without destroying what was left of our relationship. The vacation was supposed to be 2 weeks. 2 weeks to hike through the mountains, visit some small towns, maybe do some antiquing. 2 weeks to remember who I was before I became Mom or the woman with the nice penthouse. I remember sitting in that cabin, journaling about my life, writing about my late husband, Tom, who'd passed 15 years ago, writing about the career I'd built, writing about Jennifer and how proud I'd been when she graduated college, when she got married, when she had given me my 2 beautiful grandchildren. I wrote about my hopes for the future, maybe traveling more, volunteering, finally taking that art class I'd been thinking about. I felt peaceful there. Hopeful, even. I had no idea that while I was writing about new beginnings, my daughter was erasing everything I'd built. I had no idea that the power of attorney I'd signed 2 years earlier, just a precaution when I had my gallbladder surgery, something my lawyer recommended was being used against me at that very moment. I spent my last day in Colorado at a local farmer's market, buying small gifts for my grandchildren. A hand-carved wooden toy for the youngest, a beaded bracelet for the older one. I remember thinking about how excited they'd be to see Grandma, how I'd tell them stories about the mountains and maybe plan a trip to bring them back with me someday. The drive home was long but pleasant. I listened to audiobooks, stopped at roadside diners, took my time. I wasn't in any rush. Why would I be? I was heading home. To my home. My safe place. My reward for a lifetime of hard work. I pulled into my building's parking garage late in the afternoon, 3 days ago now. The security gate opened like it always did. I parked in my assigned spot, number 47. I'd had it for years. Everything seemed normal. Ordinary. I rolled my suitcase toward the elevator, already thinking about the first thing I'd do when I got upstairs. Maybe take a long bath. Order some takeout from that Thai place down the street. Call Jennifer and tell her about the trip. I had no idea I'd never make it past my own front door. The elevator ride up to the 15th floor felt exactly as it always had. The same soft hum, the same gentle jolt when it stopped. I stepped out into the familiar hallway, already fishing for my keys in my purse. Mrs. Patterson from 15C was watering the plants in the hallway like she did every Tuesday. "Welcome back, dear," she called out. "How was your trip?" "Wonderful," I said, smiling. "I'll tell you all about it later." Everything was normal. Everything was fine. I reached my door, 15G, the corner unit with the best views in the entire building, and slid my key into the lock. It wouldn't turn. I jiggled it a bit, thinking maybe the lock was stiff from disuse. Sometimes that happened after I'd been gone for a while. But nothing. The key wouldn't even go in all the way. That's when I noticed it. The lock itself looked different, newer, shinier. My stomach did a small flip, but I pushed the feeling down. Maybe building maintenance had replaced the locks? They'd done that once before, years ago, after a break-in on the 3rd floor. They must have forgotten to give me the new key. I pressed the doorbell. Once, twice, 3 times. Through the frosted glass panel beside the door, I could see movement inside. Someone was home. Good. They'd let me in and I could figure this out. The door opened, but only part way. A chain lock held it in place. A man I'd never seen before stared out at me. He was maybe 40, with a thick beard and suspicious eyes. "Yes?" "Oh, hello," I said, trying to keep my voice pleasant despite the confusion swirling in my head. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I think there's been some kind of mix-up with the locks. I live here. This is my penthouse." The man's eyebrows drew together. "What?" "I'm Margaret Torres. I live here. I've lived here for over 20 years. I held up my key ring, showing him my keys. "See? I have keys. I just got back from vacation and—" "Lady, I don't know what you're talking about." He glanced back over his shoulder, and I could see a woman appear behind him, his wife, I assumed. "Honey, there's someone at the door saying she lives here." The woman stepped forward, her face a mixture of concern and irritation. "What's going on?" "This is my home," I repeated, hearing my voice shake now. "There must be some mistake. Did maintenance let you in? Are you doing repairs?" The man shook his head slowly. "We're not doing repairs. We own this place. We bought it 3 weeks ago, closed on it, moved in, everything." The world seemed to tilt sideways. That's impossible," I whispered. "You can't have bought it. It's not for sale. It's mine." The woman crossed her arms. "Look, I don't know what's happening here, but we have the deed. We went through a real estate agent, signed all the papers, did the whole closing process. This is our home now." "Who sold it to you?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "Who told you they could sell this property?" The man and woman exchanged glances. "Your daughter," the man said finally. "Jennifer Torres Brennan. She's the one who handled the whole sale. Said you were moving into a care facility and wanted to liquidate your assets." My legs went weak. I reached out and gripped the doorframe to steady myself. "My daughter," I repeated numbly. "Yeah, nice lady. She had all the paperwork, power of attorney, everything. Our lawyer checked it all out. It was completely legal." I couldn't breathe. The hallway seemed to be closing in around me. "Ma'am, are you okay?" the woman asked, her voice softening slightly. "You look pale. Do you need to sit down?" I shook my head, taking a step back. I need to make a phone call." "Look," the man said, his tone gentler now. "I don't know what's going on here, but we bought this place fair and square. We have kids moving into the school district next month. We sold our old house to afford this one. Whatever's happening between you and your daughter, you need to work it out with her, not us." The door closed. I heard the deadbolt slide into place. I stood there in the hallway, staring at the door that had been mine for 23 years. The door I'd painted a custom shade of navy blue because it reminded me of the ocean. The door that had a tiny scratch near the bottom where I'd once dropped my keys. Except now it wasn't navy blue anymore. It was gray. A plain, unremarkable gray. They'd even repainted my door. My hands were trembling as I pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Jennifer's number. My thumb hovered over it for just a moment. Part of me didn't want to call. Part of me wanted to believe this was all some horrible misunderstanding that could be explained away. Maybe Jennifer had rented the place out while I was gone. Maybe she'd thought I was staying in Colorado longer. There had to be a reasonable explanation. But deep down, in that place where mothers know things about their children, even when they don't want to, I already knew the truth. I pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. "Mom, you're back!" Jennifer's voice was bright, almost cheerful, like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just destroyed my entire life. "Jennifer." My voice came out hoarse. "Why are there strangers living in my penthouse?" Silence on the other end. Not the silence of confusion, but the silence of someone who's been caught and is trying to decide how to respond. "Jennifer, answer me. Why did you sell my home?" I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Then came that sigh. That heavy, exaggerated sigh I'd heard 1,000 times before, the one she used when she thought I was being difficult. "Mom, okay, listen. I can explain." "Then explain." I was still standing in the hallway, my suitcase beside me, staring at the door that was no longer mine. Mrs. Patterson had gone back into her apartment, probably sensing the tension. "Explain to me why strangers are living in my penthouse." "You're being dramatic," Jennifer said, her voice taking on that edge of impatience. "It's not that big of a deal." "Not that big of a deal?" I felt heat rising in my chest. "Jennifer, this is my home. I've lived here for over 2 decades. You had no right to sell it." "Actually, Mom, I did have the right. Remember that power of attorney you signed when you had your gallbladder surgery? Well, Michael and I talked to a lawyer, and technically, I could make financial decisions on your behalf if necessary." My mind was reeling. That was for medical emergencies. That was so you could pay my hospital bills if something went wrong during surgery. It wasn't permission to sell my property behind my back. Well, our lawyer said it was legal, so. She trailed off, as if that settled everything. "Your lawyer," I repeated slowly. "Jennifer, whose lawyer did you talk to?" "Michael's friend from college. He practices real estate law. He looked over everything and said we were fine." "Of course. Michael's friend. Not an independent attorney. Not someone who might have actually explained what power of attorney meant. Someone who would tell them exactly what they wanted to hear." "Jennifer, why would you do this?" My voice cracked. "Why would you sell my home without even telling me?" Another pause. Then, quietly, almost defensively, "We needed the money, Mom." "You needed the money," I echoed. "Yes, Michael has debts, serious ones. We were about to lose everything. The bank was threatening to foreclose on our house. We had creditors calling every single day. What were we supposed to do?" "You were supposed to talk to me." The words came out louder than I intended, bouncing off the hallway walls. "You were supposed to call me and explain the situation. You were supposed to ask for help, not just steal from me." "We're not stealing, Mom. God, you always make everything so dramatic." I could hear the irritation building in her voice. "We got fair market value for the penthouse. The money went into an account. You'll get some of it once we sort out Michael's debts." "Some of it?" My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. "Jennifer, that was my home. That was my security. That was everything I worked my entire life to build. And now you'll have cash instead. Isn't that better? You're getting older, Mom. You don't need a big place like that anymore. We were actually doing you a favor." A favor. She thought she was doing me a favor. Where exactly did you think I was going to live when I got back from Colorado? "I don't know. You have options. You can rent something smaller. Maybe get one of those senior apartments with the activities and stuff. You'd probably like that better anyway. More people your age to hang out with." I closed my eyes, trying to control the anger that was threatening to overwhelm me. "So, you sold my home, took my money to pay your husband's debts, and just assumed I'd figure out where to live on my own. Well, you're smart. You always figure things out. Her tone was so casual, so dismissive, as if we were discussing what to have for dinner, rather than the destruction of my entire life. Look, Mom, I really don't have time for this right now. Michael and I are dealing with a lot of stress. The last thing I need is you making this harder than it has to be. Making this harder? I felt like I was talking to a stranger. Jennifer, do you hear yourself right now? Do you understand what you've done? What I've done is saved my family from financial ruin. You're my mother. You're supposed to want to help your children. Isn't that what parents do? Help, yes. But you didn't ask for help. You stole from me. It's not stealing if it's legal, Mom. And it was legal. I have the paperwork to prove it. Legal doesn't mean right, Jennifer. She made a sound of frustration. You know what? I'm not doing this with you right now. You're upset, I get it. But you'll see that this was the best decision for everyone once you calm down and think rationally about it. Rationally? Jennifer, I'm standing in front of my own home with nowhere to go. How is that rational? Stop being so dramatic. You're not homeless. You have money. You have resources. Just go to a hotel for tonight and we'll talk about this later when you're not being so emotional. When I'm not being so emotional, I repeated, my voice flat now. Yeah, look, I have to go. Michael needs me. We'll talk soon, okay? Jennifer, don't you dare hang up on me. We need to discuss this right now. There's nothing to discuss. It's done. The house is sold. The money is being used for what we needed it for. I'm sorry you're upset, but that doesn't change anything. Goodbye, Mom. The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the silence. She'd hung up on me. My own daughter had sold my home, taken my security, and then hung up on me when I tried to talk about it. Mrs. Patterson's door opened a crack. "Dear, are you all right?" I heard shouting. I turned to look at her, and I must have looked terrible because her expression immediately filled with concern. "I'm fine," I managed to say, though we both knew it was a lie. "Just a family situation." She nodded slowly. "If you need anything." "Thank you." I picked up my suitcase handle. "I need to find a hotel." As I walked back toward the elevator, pulling my suitcase behind me, I felt something shift inside me. The shock was fading, replaced by something colder, something sharper. Jennifer thought this was over. She thought I'd cry for a bit, maybe get angry, and then accept what she'd done because what choice did I have? But she'd made a mistake. She'd forgotten something important about me. I didn't build my life by accepting things I couldn't change. I built it by changing the things I couldn't accept. And I was about to remind her of that. The hotel room was nothing like my penthouse. Beige walls, generic landscape painting, a bed that was too soft and pillows that were too flat. But it had a roof and a lock on the door, and right now, that was all I needed. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in the same clothes I'd worn on the drive home, and stared at the wall. My suitcase lay open on the floor, untouched. I couldn't bring myself to unpack. Unpacking meant accepting that this was real, that I was actually staying in a hotel because my own daughter had sold my home. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Mom, I know you're upset, but you need to understand we had no choice. Michael's business failed and we were desperate. You would have done the same thing if you were in our position." I deleted it without responding. Another buzz. "Also, you're being really selfish right now. We're your family. Family helps each other." Deleted. I turned off my phone and tossed it onto the nightstand. I couldn't deal with her right now, not when my hands were still shaking, not when I felt like the ground had opened up beneath me. But sitting here feeling sorry for myself wasn't going to solve anything. I needed to understand exactly what had happened. I needed to see the full picture. I pulled my laptop out of my carry-on bag. One of the benefits of being meticulous my entire life was that I kept digital copies of everything important. Property deeds, bank statements, legal documents, all organized in folders, all backed up to the cloud. I opened the file labeled Property Documents and started reading through the deed to my penthouse. I'd bought it outright in 2002 for $370,000. Every month for years before that, I'd saved. I'd skipped vacations. I'd driven an old car. I'd made sacrifices because I wanted something that was mine, something that couldn't be taken away. Or so I'd thought. Next, I opened the power of attorney document I'd signed 2 years ago. I remembered that day clearly. I'd been scheduled for gallbladder surgery, and my lawyer, Robert Harrison, had recommended having someone designated to make medical and financial decisions if I was incapacitated during the procedure. It was standard precaution, he'd said. Smart planning. I'd asked Jennifer to take on that role. She was my only child. Who else would I trust? I read through the document now with fresh eyes. The language was clear. The power of attorney was meant for situations where I was unable to make decisions for myself. Medical emergencies, cognitive decline. Situations where I genuinely needed someone to step in and act on my behalf. It was never meant to give Jennifer carte blanche to sell my property while I was on vacation. I pulled up my email and searched for messages from Jennifer over the past month. There had to be something. Some indication of what she'd been planning. The first email I found was from 5 weeks ago. "Hey Mom, hope you're excited for your trip. We should grab lunch before you leave. Want to go over some paperwork while we're together?" Paperwork. My stomach tightened. I vaguely remembered that lunch. We'd met at a cafe near her house. Jennifer had seemed distracted, kept checking her phone. She'd brought a folder with her, said something about updating my emergency contacts and making sure all my documents were current. I'd signed a few things without reading them closely. She was my daughter. I trusted her. What had I signed? I kept scrolling through emails. 3 weeks ago, while I was in Colorado, there was an email from a real estate agency I'd never heard of. The subject line read, "Congratulations on your sale." I opened it with trembling fingers. "Dear Miss Torres, congratulations on the successful sale of your property at 1847 Riverside Drive, Unit 15G. The closing is scheduled for next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Please review the attached documents and contact us if you have any questions." There were attachments. PDFs of sale documents. I downloaded them and started reading. The sale price was listed as $850,000. The Penthouse had appreciated significantly over the years, especially after they'd renovated the building 5 years ago. But the money wasn't going into my account. According to the wire transfer instructions, it was being sent to an account in Jennifer and Michael's names. My hands clenched into fists. I kept reading. There was my signature on the sales agreement, except it wasn't quite my signature. It was close. Someone had practiced it, copied my handwriting style. But I could see the differences. The way the M in Margaret looped slightly wrong, the way the T in Torres was too sharp. Jennifer had forged my signature. This wasn't just a misuse of power of attorney. This was fraud, forgery. She hadn't made a mistake or misunderstood the legal documents. She'd deliberately faked my signature to sell my home without my knowledge. I sat back, feeling nauseous. How long had she been planning this? Had she thought about it during that lunch, watching me sign those updated emergency contact forms? Had she practiced my signature at home, trying to get it just right? Had Michael helped her, or was this all her idea? My mind went back through the past few months, looking for signs I'd missed. Jennifer's increasingly frequent calls about money. The way she'd asked detailed questions about my finances, disguised as concern about my retirement planning. The time she'd offered to help me organize my important documents and spent an entire afternoon photographing papers in my home office. She'd been gathering information, building a case, preparing to take everything from me. I opened another folder on my laptop. Bank statements. I wanted to see if there had been any other unusual activity. What I found made my blood run cold. Over the past 6 months, there had been small withdrawals from my savings account. Nothing huge, 1,000 here, 2,000 there. Amounts small enough that I might not notice right away, especially since I'd been busy planning my vacation. Jennifer had access to my accounts as my power of attorney. She'd been siphoning money from me for months. The total came to almost $18,000. I pressed my hands against my face, trying to steady my breathing. This was worse than I'd thought. So much worse. This wasn't a desperate decision made in a moment of panic. This was calculated, planned, methodical. My daughter had been stealing from me for half a year, and I'd been too trusting to notice. I thought about Michael. His gambling debts, according to what that couple at my door had said. I'd always known he was irresponsible with money, but I'd never imagined it was this bad. Bad enough that they'd resort to this. Or maybe this was all Jennifer. Maybe Michael was just the excuse. I didn't know anymore. I didn't know my own daughter anymore. The woman who used to call me every Sunday just to chat. The woman who'd cried in my arms when her first boyfriend broke her heart. The woman who'd asked me to help her pick out her wedding dress. Where had that person gone? When had she become someone who could do this to her own mother? I stood up and walked to the window. The hotel overlooked a parking lot, gray concrete, yellow lines, cars coming and going, people living their normal lives while mine fell apart. But even as I stood there, even as the hurt threatened to consume me, something else was building underneath it, something stronger than pain. Resolve. Jennifer thought she'd won. She thought she'd gotten away with it. She'd taken my home, my money, my trust, and she'd hung up on me like I was an inconvenience. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated me. I'd spent 40 years in the legal field. I knew how the system worked. I knew what fraud looked like. I knew how to build a case. And I knew people who could help me. I picked up my phone and turned it back on, ignored the 3 new texts from Jennifer. Instead, I scrolled to a different contact. Robert Harrison. My lawyer. My friend. Someone I'd known for 30 years. It was late, almost 9 in the evening, but I called anyway. He picked up on the second ring. Margaret, everything all right? Robert, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I need your help. My daughter just stole everything from me, and I need to get it back. Robert met me at his office the next morning. I'd barely slept, my mind racing through everything I'd discovered. But when I walked into that familiar building on 4th Street, the same office where I'd worked as a paralegal decades ago, I felt something I hadn't felt since returning from Colorado. Hope. Robert was waiting in the lobby. He'd aged since I'd seen him last, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. But his handshake was firm and his expression was serious. "Come on up," he said. "I've already cleared my morning." We rode the elevator in silence. I was grateful he didn't try to make small talk or offer empty reassurances. Robert had always been practical that way. We'd worked together long enough that he knew when to speak and when to listen. His office looked exactly the same as I remembered. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with legal texts, a massive oak desk covered in neat stacks of files, the same coffee maker in the corner that had been there since 1987. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the leather chair across from his desk. "Tell me everything." So I did. I started with the vacation, the return home, the stranger at my door. I told him about the phone call with Jennifer, about the forged signatures I'd found, about the months of small withdrawals from my account. I showed him the documents I'd printed from my laptop, the emails, the bank statements. Robert listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and rubbed his temples. "Margaret, I'm so sorry this happened to you." "I don't need apologies," I said quietly. "I need to know if I can fix this." He leaned forward, spreading the documents across his desk. "Let me be very clear about something. What Jennifer did wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. Multiple counts of fraud, forgery, elder abuse, misuse of power of attorney. This isn't a gray area, this is criminal. Can I get my home back?" "That's the goal," he said. "But I need to be honest with you about what we're facing. The couple who bought your penthouse, they're innocent victims in this too. They purchased the property in good faith. Getting the sale reversed is going to require proving that the transaction was fraudulent from the start. I have proof," I said, pointing to the documents. "The forged signature, the unauthorized use of power of attorney, the fact that I was out of the country and had no knowledge of the sale. That's a good start." Robert pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. "We'll need more, though. We need to document everything. Timeline of events. Communications with Jennifer, proof that you never intended to sell, testimony from people who can verify your mental competency and that you weren't planning to move into assisted living." "Mrs. Patterson," I said. "My neighbor. She saw me the day I got back. She can testify that I had no idea what had happened." "Good. Who else?" I thought for a moment. "My doctor. I just had my annual checkup before the trip. He can confirm I'm of sound mind and body. And there's Margaret Chen, a friend from my book club. I had lunch with her 2 days before I left for Colorado. I told her how excited I was to come back home." Robert wrote it all down. We'll need bank records showing the unauthorized withdrawals. We'll need the original power of attorney document to show it was meant for medical purposes only. And we'll need to move fast. The longer that couple lives in your penthouse, the more complicated this gets. How fast can we move? I'll file for an emergency injunction first thing this afternoon. That should freeze any further transfer of funds and put the property status in question. Then we'll petition for a full hearing. He paused, looking at me over his reading glasses. Margaret, I need you to understand something. This is going to get ugly. Jennifer is your daughter. Taking her to court, potentially pressing criminal charges, that's going to destroy whatever relationship you have left. She destroyed it when she forged my name and sold my home, I said, my voice steady. I gave her life. I raised her. I sacrificed for her. And she repaid me by stealing everything I worked for. Whatever relationship we had ended the moment she decided I was worth less to her than money. Robert nodded slowly. All right then, let's talk strategy. We spent the next 2 hours going through every detail. Robert made phone calls to colleagues, pulled up case law, drafted preliminary documents. He contacted a forensic document examiner who could analyze the forged signature. He reached out to a private investigator who could dig into Michael's financial history and gambling debts. If we can prove that Michael was in severe financial trouble and that Jennifer knew about it, that establishes motive, Robert explained. It shows this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was intentional theft. By noon, I felt like I could breathe again. Not because the problem was solved, but because I finally had a path forward. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't just a victim. I was fighting back. One more thing, Robert said as I was gathering my things to leave. Jennifer's going to contact you, probably soon. She's going to realize you're not just accepting this, and she's going to try to manipulate you. She might apologize. She might cry. She might try to make you feel guilty for taking legal action against your own daughter. I know. Don't engage with her. Don't answer her calls or texts. Everything from this point forward goes through me. Can you do that? I thought about all the times Jennifer had manipulated me over the years. The guilt trips, the emotional blackmail, the way she'd twist situations to make herself the victim. I'd fallen for it every time because I loved her, because I wanted to believe my daughter was a good person who just made mistakes. But this wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. A series of choices, made over months, all designed to take advantage of the person who loved her most. Yes, I said, I can do that. Robert walked me to the elevator. We're going to get your home back, Margaret. I promise you that. I nodded, but as the elevator doors closed, I realized something. Getting my home back wasn't enough. It wasn't just about the penthouse or the money. It was about justice. It was about making sure Jennifer understood that actions have consequences, that you can't just take what you want from people and walk away unscathed. She'd thought I was weak, an easy target, an old woman who'd just accept whatever her daughter decided was best for her. She was about to learn how wrong she was. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jennifer. Mom, seriously, you need to stop being so stubborn. Just accept that this is what's best for everyone and move on. You're embarrassing yourself. I smiled. A cold smile. The kind of smile you get when you know something the other person doesn't. Jennifer had no idea what was coming, but she was about to find out. 3 days later, I sat in a small conference room in Robert's office, surrounded by people I'd never met but desperately needed. There was Daniel Wright, the forensic document examiner Robert had recommended. Beside him sat Patricia Moore, a private investigator who specialized in financial fraud. And across from me was Robert himself, a stack of folders growing taller by the hour. Let's start with the signature analysis, Robert said, nodding to Daniel. Daniel pulled out a magnifying device and positioned it over the sales documents. Mrs. Torres, I've examined both the signature on the property sale and samples of your actual signature from various documents over the years. There are significant differences. He pointed to the screen where he'd projected enlarged images of the signatures side by side. See here? Your natural signature has a very distinctive flow. The G in Margaret curves back slightly and connects to the A, but in the forged signature, that connection is absent. The person who signed this tried to copy your style, but didn't understand the muscle memory behind it. I leaned closer, studying the images. He was right. I'd been signing my name the same way for 50 years. You don't think about it, you just do it. But someone trying to copy it would have to think about every stroke, and that shows. There are at least 8 distinct differences I can point to, Daniel continued. The pressure points are wrong. The speed of writing is inconsistent. And most tellingly, there's a slight tremor in the forged signature that suggests hesitation. Someone was nervous when they signed your name. Can you testify to this in court? Robert asked. Absolutely. I'll prepare a full report with detailed analysis. This signature is definitely not authentic. Robert made a note. Good. That's solid evidence of forgery. Patricia, what did you find about the financial situation? Patricia opened her laptop and turned it to face us. Michael Brennan is in deep trouble. I'm talking about over $200,000 in debt accumulated over the last 18 months. Most of it from gambling. My stomach dropped. $200,000. He's got accounts at 3 different casinos in Atlantic City, Patricia continued, plus online gambling sites. He's also been borrowing from private lenders, the kind that charge interest rates that would make a loan shark blush. I found evidence of at least 5 different loans, all at rates above 20% annually. How did it get this bad? I asked. Patricia glanced at Robert, then back to me. From what I can tell, he started small. Regular casino visits, nothing too alarming. But about 2 years ago, something changed. The amounts got bigger. The frequency increased. Classic gambling addiction pattern. He'd win a little, think he could win more, then lose it all and try to win it back. And Jennifer knew? Oh, she knew. Patricia clicked to another screen showing bank statements. These are from their joint account. Look at these transactions. Large cash withdrawals, always just under $10,000 to avoid triggering bank reporting requirements. Jennifer made most of these withdrawals herself. I stared at the dates. Some of them were from over a year ago. Jennifer had been dealing with this for that long and never said a word to me, never asked for help. Just let it build until they decided the only solution was to steal my home. There's more, Patricia said. Michael's business, the consulting firm he claimed was doing so well, it's been operating at a loss for 3 years. He's been falsifying tax documents, showing income that doesn't exist. The IRS hasn't caught on yet, but they will. Robert leaned back in his chair, processing everything. So we have a clear motive. Desperate financial situation, mounting debts, and a mother-in-law with substantial assets. Patricia, did you find any evidence that they planned this in advance? I'm still working on that, but I found something interesting. Patricia pulled up an email thread. This is from 4 months ago, an email from Jennifer to Michael with the subject line, Mom's Properties. In it, she's discussing the current market value of your penthouse and speculating about what they could get for it. 4 months ago, long before I'd even planned my Colorado trip, she was researching how to sell my home 4 months ago, I said, my voice hollow. It gets worse, Patricia said gently. I found text messages between Jennifer and a real estate agent from 6 weeks ago. She was asking about how to handle a sale when the owner was temporarily unavailable. The agent gave her information about power of attorney sales. 6 weeks ago, right before she'd invited me to that lunch where I'd signed those papers. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. Every new piece of information was another weight pressing down on my chest. Mrs. Torres, are you all right? Daniel asked. You've gone pale. I'm fine, I lied. Please, continue. Robert gave me a concerned look but nodded to Patricia to keep going. I also pulled Jennifer's credit card statements, Patricia said. In the weeks leading up to the sale, she made several purchases that suggest she was preparing for this. She bought a notary stamp online. She purchased tracing paper and high-quality pens. She even bought a book about document forgery. I closed my eyes. Each detail was another nail in the coffin of any doubt I might have had. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. My daughter had researched, planned, and executed a calculated theft. The notary who witnessed the signature, Robert interjected. Patricia, were you able to find out anything about them? Yes, his name is Kevin Foster. He's a mobile notary who advertises quick, no-questions-asked service. I spoke to him yesterday, pretending I needed documents notarized. He admitted, off the record, that he doesn't always verify identities thoroughly if the client seems trustworthy. I'd bet money Jennifer paid him extra to look the other way. Can we prove that? Robert asked. Not yet, but I'm working on it. If I can get his bank records showing an unusually large payment from Jennifer around the time of the notarization, that would be damning. Robert turned to me. Margaret, I know this is hard to hear, but this is actually good news from a legal standpoint. We're not dealing with a misunderstanding or a gray area. This is clear, premeditated fraud. The evidence is overwhelming. I nodded slowly. Good news. It felt strange to call it that when every piece of evidence felt like another betrayal. There's one more thing, Patricia said, her voice softer now. I looked into Jennifer's personal accounts, separate from the joint account with Michael. She's been moving money. Small amounts, transferred to an account in the Cayman Islands. It started about 2 weeks after the Penthouse sale. She's hiding assets, Robert said immediately. She knew this might catch up with her eventually. She's trying to squirrel money away where it can't be touched. The Cayman Islands. My daughter had gone so far as to open offshore accounts. This wasn't just theft. This was sophisticated financial crime. I stood up and walked to the window. The street below was busy with afternoon traffic. People heading home from work, running errands, living normal lives. I used to have a normal life. I used to worry about normal things, like whether I'd planted my tomatoes too early or if I needed to replace the filter in my air conditioner. Now I was standing in a lawyer's office, learning that my only child had spent months planning to rob me. Mrs. Torres? Patricia's voice brought me back. I know this is a lot to take in. How much did they get? I asked, still looking out the window. From the sale of my penthouse. How much money did they actually receive? $850,000, Robert said quietly, minus closing costs and agent fees, probably around $800,000 net. $800,000, my life's work, my security, my home, all gone to feed Michael's gambling addiction and whatever else they'd spent it on. How much is left? Patricia hesitated. Based on what I can find, maybe $200,000. The rest has been used to pay off debts, though not all of them. Michael still owes money to several creditors. Some of it went to the offshore account, and there are large cash withdrawals I can't trace. Could be more gambling, could be something else. $600,000, spent or hidden in just 3 weeks. I turned back to face them. What happens next? Robert gathered his papers. Next, we go to court. We file for the emergency injunction tomorrow. We present all of this evidence. We ask the judge to reverse the sale, freeze all of Jennifer and Michael's accounts, and start criminal proceedings for fraud and elder abuse. Will it work? With evidence like this? Yes. I'm confident we'll win. The question isn't if, it's when. And how much damage Jennifer and Michael do to themselves trying to fight it. I sat back down, feeling exhausted. Exhausted but also strangely clear-headed. The investigation had given me something I desperately needed. Not just evidence, but understanding. I understood now that this wasn't about me. It wasn't something I'd done wrong or failed to see. This was about Jennifer and Michael making choices. Terrible choices, criminal choices. And now they were going to face the consequences of those choices. Thank you, I said to everyone in the room. All of you, for helping me see the truth. Daniel packed up his equipment. Happy to help, Mrs. Torres. No one should have to go through what you're going through. As everyone filed out, Robert stayed behind. Margaret, there's something else we need to discuss. When we go to court, Jennifer is going to try to paint herself as the victim. She'll say she was just trying to help, that Michael pressured her, that she didn't understand what she was doing. Let her try, I said. We have emails, text messages, evidence of planning. A jury will see through it. They will, Robert agreed. But I need to prepare you. She's your daughter. Seeing her in court, watching her try to defend the indefensible, it's going to hurt. It already hurts, I said quietly. Every day since I came home, it's hurt. But you know what hurts more? The thought of letting her get away with it. The thought of other people thinking it's okay to treat their parents this way. No. She made her choices. Now she lives with them. Robert nodded, satisfied. All right then. Court date is set for Monday, 3 days from now. Get some rest this weekend. You're going to need your strength. As I left the office and stepped out into the late afternoon sun, I felt different, lighter somehow. The investigation had shown me the full scope of the betrayal, yes. But it had also shown me that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. What had been done to me was wrong, and I had every right to fight back. Jennifer had counted on me being too hurt, too confused, too defeated to do anything about it. She'd counted wrong. I didn't tell Robert I was going to see Jennifer. He would have tried to stop me, reminded me that all communication should go through him, warned me about saying something that could hurt our case. And he would have been right. But this wasn't about the case. Not entirely. This was about looking my daughter in the eye and making her understand that I knew exactly what she'd done. I drove to her house on Saturday afternoon. It was a modest, two-story colonial in the suburbs, the kind of place that screamed middle-class respectability. Neat lawn, two-car garage, a basketball hoop in the driveway. From the outside, you'd never guess the people who lived here had just committed fraud. I sat in my rental car for a moment, gathering my courage. Through the living room window, I could see movement. Jennifer was home. Good. I walked up the front path and rang the doorbell. Waited. Heard footsteps inside. The door opened. Jennifer stood there in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. When she saw me, her expression shifted from curious to annoyed in the space of a heartbeat. "Mom, what are you doing here? We need to talk." "I don't think that's a good idea right now. You're obviously still upset and I really don't want to deal with more drama." I stepped forward, and something in my expression must have told her I wasn't leaving. She backed up, and I walked inside without being invited. The house was exactly as I remembered it. Same beige carpet, same furniture we'd picked out together 5 years ago when they'd first moved in. Family photos on the walls, including several of me with my grandchildren. I wondered if she felt any shame looking at those photos, knowing what she'd done. "Jennifer, we need to have a conversation. A real one, not through text messages or angry phone calls, face to face." She crossed her arms defensively. "Fine. Say what you came to say. Where's Michael?" "Upstairs, and he's staying there. This is between you and me." "No," I said quietly. "This involves him too. Call him down." "Mom, I'm not going to." "Call him down, Jennifer. Now." Something in my tone made her pause. Maybe she heard the steel underneath it. Maybe she realized I wasn't the same woman who'd left for Colorado 4 weeks ago. Whatever it was, she turned and called up the stairs. "Michael, can you come down here?" Heavy footsteps on the stairs. Then Michael appeared, looking wary. He was a big man, tall and broad-shouldered, but right now he looked small, cornered. "Mrs. Torres," he said, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good to see you." "Is it?" I asked. "Is it really good to see the woman whose home you stole?" The smile vanished. "Now wait just a minute. We didn't steal anything. Everything we did was legal." "Legal," I repeated. "You keep using that word. Do you know what else is legal, Michael?" Forensic document analysis, private investigators, court orders, and I've employed all 3. Jennifer's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that I know everything." I moved further into the living room, and they both backed up slightly, like I was something dangerous. Maybe I was. I know about the forged signature on the sales documents. I know about the months of unauthorized withdrawals from my account. I know about Michael's gambling debts. Michael's jaw tightened. "My finances are none of your business." "They became my business when you convinced my daughter to steal from me to pay them off." "We didn't steal," Jennifer interjected, her voice rising. "We used legal power of attorney. You signed it yourself." "For medical emergencies," I said, my voice steady and cold. "Not for you to sell my home while I was on vacation. Not for you to forge my signature on sales documents. Not for you to take everything I worked for and use it to clean up your husband's mess." Jennifer's hands were shaking now. "You don't understand. We were desperate. The bank was going to take our house. We had people calling at all hours demanding money. We didn't have a choice." "You had a choice," I said, taking a step closer to her. "You could have told me the truth. You could have asked for help. You could have filed for bankruptcy. You had a dozen different choices, and you chose to commit fraud." "It's not fraud," Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. I turned to look at him. Really look at him. This man who I'd welcomed into my family, who I'd given money to over the years when Jennifer said he was between jobs, who I'd trusted because my daughter loved him. $200,000 in gambling debts, I said. 3 different casinos, online betting sites, private lenders charging 20% interest. Should I go on? His face flushed red. Who told you that? I hired a private investigator. She's very good at her job. She found everything, the debts, the failed business, the falsified tax documents, and my favorite part, the offshore account Jennifer opened 2 weeks after selling my home. Jennifer gasped. You had us investigated? What did you think I was going to do? Just accept that you'd stolen from me? Just move on and find a new place to live while you spent my money? I shook my head. You forgot who raised you, Jennifer. You forgot that I spent 40 years working in law. Did you really think I wouldn't fight back? She sat down heavily on the couch, her hands covering her face. This is insane. You're supposed to be my mother. You're supposed to support me. I was your mother. I raised you. I sacrificed for you. I worked 2 jobs to pay for your college. I helped you with the down payment on this house. I babysat your children so you could build your career. And you repaid all of that by forging my signature and selling my home. We were going to give you some of the money, Jennifer said weakly, once we got the debts under control. Some of the money, I repeated. How generous. Tell me, Jennifer, how much of my $800,000 is left? Silence. Neither of them answered. I'll tell you how much. About $200,000. You spent or hid $600,000 in 3 weeks. $600,000 that wasn't yours to spend. Michael moved toward the door, like he was thinking about leaving. I don't have to listen to this. Actually, you do, I said, because Monday morning I'm going to court. I'm filing for an emergency injunction to freeze all of your accounts and reverse the sale of my penthouse. I'm also pressing charges for fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and misuse of power of attorney. Jennifer's head snapped up. Elder abuse? Mom, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. What you did fits the legal definition perfectly. You exploited your position of trust to steal from an elderly person. That's textbook elder abuse. I'm your daughter, she said, tears starting to stream down her face. How can you do this to me? How can you send your own daughter to jail? I looked at her. This woman I'd given birth to, raised, loved unconditionally for 40 years, and I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her. She'd burned all of that away when she decided I was worth less than money. I'm not sending you to jail, I said quietly. You sent yourself there the moment you forged my signature. I'm just making sure you get there. This is ridiculous, Michael said, finding his voice again. You can't prove any of this. Can't I? I pulled out my phone and opened the folder where I'd saved copies of everything. I have the forensic analysis showing 8 distinct differences between my real signature and the forged one. I have bank records showing unauthorized withdrawals. I have emails from 4 months ago where Jennifer discussed selling my home. I have text messages where she asked a real estate agent about power of attorney sales. I have evidence of your gambling debts, your failed business, your tax fraud. I have everything, Michael. Everything. The color drained from his face. Jennifer was sobbing now. Mom, please. Think about your grandchildren. If we go to jail, what happens to them? And there it was. The manipulation I'd been expecting. Use the grandchildren as leverage. Make me feel guilty for holding her accountable. You should have thought about your children before you committed fraud. I said, you should have thought about them before you decided to steal from their grandmother. You made choices, Jennifer. You chose this path. And now you get to live with the consequences. We can pay you back, Michael said desperately. We'll sell this house. We'll get jobs. We'll pay back every penny. With what money? You've already spent most of it. And even if you hadn't, this isn't about money anymore. This is about trust. This is about family. This is about 2 people who looked at someone who loved them and saw nothing but an opportunity. I turned toward the door, done with this conversation. Done with their excuses and their tears and their desperate attempts to avoid responsibility. Wait, Jennifer called out. "Mom, please, there has to be some way to fix this, some way to make this right." I paused at the door and looked back at her. There was a way to make this right. It was called not doing it in the first place. It was called being honest. It was called treating your mother with respect instead of like an ATM you could rob whenever you needed cash. "So that's it?" she asked. "You're just going to destroy your own family?" "I'm not destroying anything," I said. "You already did that. I'm just cleaning up the mess." I walked out, closing the door behind me. Behind it, I could hear Jennifer's sobs and Michael's angry voice. But I didn't go back, didn't hesitate, didn't second-guess myself. As I drove away from that house, I felt something settle inside me, a sense of rightness, of purpose. Jennifer had gambled that I wouldn't fight back, that maternal love would override justice, that I'd choose family harmony over holding her accountable. She'd lost that bet. And on Monday, she'd find out just how much that loss was going to cost her. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and a biting wind. I stood on the courthouse steps, clutching my purse and the folder containing copies of all our evidence. Robert was beside me, his briefcase in one hand and a coffee in the other. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded. I'd been ready since the moment I stood on my own driveway and realized what Jennifer had done. The courthouse was busy, people streaming in and out, lawyers in expensive suits, families looking worried and lost, court officers directing traffic. I'd been in buildings like this countless times during my years as a paralegal, but it felt different when you were the one seeking justice. We went through security and made our way to the third floor, Judge Patricia Whitmore's courtroom. Robert had told me she was fair but no nonsense. She didn't tolerate games or manipulation. That was exactly what I needed. Jennifer and Michael weren't there yet. I was glad. I didn't want to see them before we had to face each other in front of the judge. We sat on a bench outside the courtroom, and Robert reviewed his notes one more time. "The emergency injunction hearing should be straightforward," he said. "We're asking the judge to freeze the property transfer and all associated accounts pending a full trial. Given the evidence we have, I'm confident she'll grant it." "And then what?" "Then we wait for a trial date. Could be a few weeks. Could be a few months. The courts are backlogged. But the injunction will protect your interests in the meantime. They won't be able to touch any more of the money, and the couple living in your penthouse will be notified that the ownership is in dispute." A few months. The thought of living in a hotel for months made my chest tighten. But what choice did I have? "Mrs. Torres?" I looked up. A young woman in a business suit stood before us holding a tablet. "I'm Amanda Lee, victim advocate with the district attorney's office. May I speak with you for a moment?" Robert nodded, and I stood to follow her to a quieter corner. "I've been reviewing your case," Amanda said gently. "The DA is very interested in pursuing criminal charges against your daughter and son-in-law. Elder abuse cases are a priority for our office. But I need to ask you something important. Are you prepared for what that means?" "What does it mean?" "It means this goes beyond civil court. Criminal charges carry the possibility of jail time, for both of them. I need to know that you understand that and are willing to proceed." I thought about my grandchildren, about Jennifer's face when she'd begged me to think about them, about the family dinners we'd never have again, about the life I'd imagined having with my daughter and her family. Then I thought about standing in front of my own door with nowhere to go, about the forged signature, about the months of planning, about $600,000 spent in 3 weeks. "Yes," I said, "I'm willing to proceed." Amanda nodded. "Good. We'll coordinate with your civil attorney. Whatever happens in your case today will help inform our criminal investigation." She left, and I returned to Robert just as Jennifer and Michael arrived with their lawyer. I'd never seen their attorney before. He looked young, maybe 30, with an overly confident swagger that immediately put me on edge. Jennifer wouldn't look at me. She kept her eyes on the floor, her hand gripping Michael's arm. Michael, on the other hand, stared at me with barely concealed anger. Their lawyer approached Robert. "Harrison, I'm Todd Brenner. I'm hoping we can resolve this without wasting the court's time. Your client is obviously confused about the legal parameters of the power of attorney. Perhaps if we sat down and explained it to her." "My client isn't confused about anything," Robert said coolly. "She's the victim of fraud, and we have extensive evidence to prove it." "Evidence that you obtained through illegal surveillance, I'd imagine," Brenner shot back. Any private investigation conducted without proper authorization was completely legal and conducted by a licensed investigator, Robert finished. Nice try, though. The courtroom doors opened, and a clerk called us inside. Case number 2025CV8847, Torres versus Torres and Brennan. We filed in and took our positions, Jennifer, Michael, and their lawyer on one side, Robert and me on the other. The judge's bench loomed above us, empty for now. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Whitmore. Judge Whitmore entered through a side door. She was a woman in her 60s with short gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She sat, adjusted her glasses, and opened the file in front of her. "This is a hearing on an emergency motion for injunction," she said. "Mr. Harrison, you're representing the plaintiff?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And Mr. Brenner, you're representing the defendants?" "Correct, Your Honor." "Mr. Harrison, make your case." Robert stood and launched into our argument. He was precise, methodical, building the case piece by piece. He presented the forged signature analysis, the timeline of events, the evidence of planning, the unauthorized withdrawals, Michael's gambling debts, everything we'd gathered over the past week. Judge Whitmore listened intently, occasionally making notes. She asked clarifying questions that showed she understood exactly what was at stake. When Robert finished, Brenner stood to respond. "Your Honor, the defense maintains that Mrs. Jennifer Torres acted within her legal rights under the power of attorney. Her mother signed this document voluntarily. The language is broad enough to encompass financial decisions. There's no fraud here, just a family disagreement about the extent of authority granted." "Mr. Brenner," the judge said, "are you seriously arguing that forging someone's signature falls within the scope of power of attorney?" "We dispute that the signature was forged, Your Honor. Mrs. Margaret Torres is 72 years old. It's possible her signature has simply changed over time due to natural aging." I felt my hands clench into fists. He was calling me old and senile without saying the words directly. Robert stood immediately. "Your Honor, we have a certified forensic document examiner who will testify that the signature is definitively forged. We also have Mrs. Torres's doctor prepared to testify that she has no cognitive impairment whatsoever. She's sharp, competent, and fully aware of what was done to her." Judge Whitmore looked at me directly. "Mrs. Torres, did you authorize the sale of your penthouse?" I stood. "No, Your Honor. I had no knowledge of the sale until I returned home from vacation and found strangers living there. And the power of attorney you signed, what was your understanding of its purpose?" "It was for medical emergencies only, Your Honor. I signed it before gallbladder surgery 2 years ago. My lawyer recommended it as a precaution." The judge turned back to Brenner. "Mr. Brenner, do you have any evidence that Mrs. Torres intended to grant her daughter authority to sell her property?" He shuffled through papers. "Not specific evidence, Your Honor, but the power of attorney document does grant broad financial authority. For medical purposes," Robert interjected, "the document specifically states it's meant to cover medical decisions and associated financial matters, hospital bills, not real estate transactions." Judge Whitmore was silent for a long moment, reading through the power of attorney document herself. Finally, she looked up. "I'm granting the emergency injunction. All accounts associated with the sale of the property are frozen as of this moment. The property transfer is stayed pending full trial. Mr. Brenner, your clients are not to dispose of any assets or make any large financial transactions without court approval. Is that clear?" "Your Honor, this will cause significant hardship for my clients. They have bills to pay, children to support. They should have thought of that before allegedly forging signatures and selling property that wasn't theirs to sell," the judge said sharply. "The injunction stands. We'll schedule a full hearing for," she consulted her calendar, "6 weeks from today. That will give both sides time to prepare their cases thoroughly. 6 weeks. That meant 6 more weeks in a hotel, 6 more weeks in limbo. But it also meant Jennifer and Michael couldn't touch what was left of my money, couldn't hide more assets, couldn't run. This court is adjourned." As we filed out, Jennifer finally looked at me. Her eyes were red, her face drawn. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but Michael pulled her away. Outside the courtroom, Robert shook my hand. That went exactly as we hoped. The judge saw through their arguments immediately. 6 weeks, I said. That's a long time to wait. Use it, Robert advised. Rest. Build up your strength. We have a solid case, but the full trial is going to be intense. Jennifer's lawyer is going to try every trick in the book to make you look vindictive or confused. You need to be ready. I nodded. 6 weeks suddenly felt like both too long and not long enough. The days that followed were strange. I was in limbo, caught between the life I'd had and the life I was trying to reclaim. I stayed in my hotel room most days, working with Robert to prepare for trial. We went over testimony, practiced responses to questions I might be asked, reviewed evidence until I could recite it in my sleep. But at night, alone in that generic hotel room, doubt crept in. What if the judge at the full trial didn't see things as clearly? What if Brenner found some legal loophole? What if I'd miscalculated and was about to lose everything for good? On those nights, I'd pull out my phone and look at photos of my penthouse, the view from the balcony, the reading nook, the kitchen where I'd baked cookies for my grandchildren, my home, my sanctuary, the physical representation of a lifetime of work. And then I'd remember Jennifer's voice on the phone. Stop being so dramatic. The casual dismissal, the complete lack of remorse. No, I wasn't wrong. I wasn't being vindictive. I was fighting for what was mine, for justice, for the principle that you can't just take what you want from people and walk away. 6 weeks crawled by. Robert called with updates. The private investigator found more evidence. The forensic accountant traced more hidden money. The DA's office formally announced they were pursuing criminal charges. Each piece of news made the case stronger, made victory seem more certain. But it also made the final confrontation loom larger. Soon, very soon, I'd be sitting in that courtroom again. And this time, it wouldn't be a quick hearing. It would be a trial. A reckoning. Jennifer and Michael's day of judgment was coming. And I was ready. The morning of the trial, I woke before dawn. My hotel room was dark and quiet, but sleep was impossible. Today was the day. After 6 weeks of waiting, of preparing, of lying awake wondering if justice would truly be served, we were finally going to court. I dressed carefully, a navy suit that I'd owned for years, professional but not showy, pearl earrings Tom had given me on our 30th anniversary, sensible shoes. I wanted the judge and jury to see me as I was, a competent, dignified woman who'd been wronged, not some confused elderly person who couldn't manage her own affairs. Robert picked me up at 8. The trial was scheduled for 9:30, but he wanted time to go over everything one last time. "How are you feeling?" he asked as I settled into his car. "Nervous," I admitted. "What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing's going to go wrong. We have evidence. We have witnesses. We have the truth on our side." He glanced at me. "Jennifer's lawyer is going to try to rattle you. He's going to imply you're forgetful, that you did agree to the sale but don't remember. Don't let him get under your skin." "I won't." But as we pulled into the courthouse parking lot, my stomach was in knots. This was it. Everything I'd been fighting for came down to what happened in that courtroom today. We made our way through security and up to Judge Whitmore's courtroom. It was more crowded this time. A jury had been selected during preliminary hearings. 12 people who would decide my fate. They sat in the jury box, looking serious and attentive. Jennifer and Michael were already there with Brenner. Jennifer looked thinner than she had 6 weeks ago. Dark circles under her eyes. Her clothes hung loose on her frame. Michael looked angry, his jaw set, his eyes hard. I took my seat next to Robert and tried to calm my racing heart. "All rise." Judge Whitmore entered and took her place. She surveyed the courtroom with those sharp eyes, then nodded to the bailiff. "This is the matter of Torres versus Torres and Brennan. Opening statements. Mr. Harrison, you may proceed." Robert stood and addressed the jury. His voice was clear and confident. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about trust, about a daughter who exploited her elderly mother's love and confidence to commit fraud. Margaret Torres worked her entire life to buy her home. She saved. She sacrificed. She earned that penthouse through decades of hard work. And while she was away on vacation, her daughter forged her signature and sold it without her knowledge or consent. This isn't a family squabble. This is theft. And over the next few hours, we will prove that beyond any doubt." He sat down, and Brenner stood. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear is a tragedy, but not the tragedy Mr. Harrison describes. This is the tragedy of a family torn apart by misunderstanding. Jennifer Torres acted in what she believed was her mother's best interest, using authority her mother had legally granted her. Yes, the sale happened while Mrs. Torres was away, but it was done to preserve family assets during a financial crisis. This is a case about differing interpretations of legal documents, not fraud. I felt my jaw clench. Differing interpretations, as if forging my signature was just a matter of perspective. The plaintiff may call its first witness, Judge Whitmore said. The plaintiff calls Mrs. Margaret Torres to the stand. I stood on shaking legs and made my way to the witness box. The bailiff had me place my hand on a Bible and swear to tell the truth, as if I'd come this far just to lie. Robert began with easy questions: my name, my age, how long I'd owned the penthouse. He walked me through my career, establishing that I was competent and sharp. Then he moved to the vacation. Mrs. Torres, when you left for Colorado, did you have any intention of selling your home? None whatsoever. I loved that home. I was looking forward to coming back to it. And did you give your daughter permission to sell it while you were away? Absolutely not. I had no idea she was even considering it. What happened when you returned? I told the story. Finding strangers at my door. The phone call with Jennifer. Her dismissive tone. Her casual announcement that she'd sold my home to pay Michael's debts. How did that make you feel? Betrayed, I said quietly. Devastated, like I'd lost everything. Robert showed me the power of attorney document. Is this your signature? Yes. I signed that before my gallbladder surgery 2 years ago. My lawyer recommended it as a precaution. What was your understanding of what this document allowed? It was for medical decisions, hospital bills, things like that. If I was unconscious or unable to communicate during surgery, Jennifer could make choices about my care. That's all. Did you ever discuss selling your property with Jennifer? Never. The thought never crossed my mind. Robert showed me the sales documents. Is this your signature? I looked at it carefully, even though I'd seen it dozens of times. No, that's not my signature. It's similar, but it's not mine. How can you tell? I've been signing my name the same way for 50 years. The flow is wrong. The connections between letters aren't right. Someone copied my signature, but they didn't have the muscle memory. They had to think about each stroke. Robert showed me the enlarged images from the forensic analysis, pointing out the differences. The jury leaned forward, studying them. Thank you, Mrs. Torres. No further questions. Brenner stood and approached me with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mrs. Torres, you're 72 years old, correct? Yes. And at 72, would you say your memory is as sharp as it was when you were younger? My memory is excellent, I said firmly. I can tell you what I had for breakfast 6 weeks ago if you'd like. A few jurors smiled. Brenner's jaw tightened. You've testified that you never discussed selling the property, but isn't it possible you had a conversation with your daughter and simply forgot? No. I would remember discussing the sale of my home. Mrs. Torres, isn't it true that you've been experiencing financial strain in recent years? That maintaining the penthouse was becoming difficult? That's absolutely false. My finances were in excellent shape. I had savings, a pension, and rental income from another property I own. Brenner looked surprised. He clearly hadn't known about the rental property. Your daughter has testified in deposition that you complained about the maintenance costs of the penthouse, that you'd mentioned downsizing. I never said any such thing. So your daughter is lying? Yes, I said, meeting his eyes. She's lying. Just like she lied when she forged my signature. Just like she lied to the real estate agent. Just like she lied to the couple who bought my home. You seem very angry with your daughter. Wouldn't you be angry if someone stole from you? Objection, Robert called out. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Whitmore said. Mr. Brenner, move on. Brenner tried a few more angles, but I didn't waver. Finally, he dismissed me, and I returned to my seat. Robert called Daniel Wright, the forensic document examiner. Daniel was brilliant on the stand, explaining in clear terms how signatures work, how muscle memory creates consistent patterns, and how the signature on the sales documents was definitely not mine. Brenner tried to challenge him, but Daniel had decades of experience and credentials that couldn't be disputed. The jury looked convinced. Next came Patricia Moore, the private investigator. She laid out everything she'd found: Michael's gambling debts, the casino accounts, the private loans, the falsified business records, the offshore account Jennifer had opened. With each piece of evidence, I watched the jury's expressions shift from neutral to shocked to disgusted. Brenner tried to object, claiming the investigation was invasive, but Judge Whitmore shut him down. The defendant's financial situation is directly relevant to establishing motive. Objection overruled. Finally, Robert called my doctor, who testified that I was in excellent health, both physically and mentally, no cognitive decline, no memory issues, sharp as anyone half my age. When Robert rested our case, I felt cautiously hopeful. The evidence was overwhelming. Surely the jury could see the truth. Brenner called Jennifer to the stand. She walked up slowly, looking small and frightened. She took the oath and sat down, her hands folded in her lap. "Mrs. Brennan, why did you sell your mother's penthouse?" "We were desperate," Jennifer said, her voice breaking. "Michael lost his business. We had creditors calling constantly. I was afraid we'd lose our home, that our children would be out on the street. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone." "Did you intend to defraud your mother?" "No, never. I thought the power of attorney gave me the authority. I thought I was helping." "Did you forge your mother's signature?" "No. I signed it myself, but I believed I had the legal right to sign on her behalf under the power of attorney." I watched the jury. Some looked sympathetic, others skeptical. This was the dangerous moment. If they believed Jennifer's tears, believed she was just a desperate mother who made a mistake, we could lose. Robert stood for cross-examination. His expression was serious but not aggressive. "Mrs. Brennan, you testified you believed the power of attorney gave you authority to sell the property. Did you consult with a lawyer before doing so?" "Yes." Michael's friend reviewed the documents. "Did this friend specialize in elder law or power of attorney issues?" I don't know." "Did you consult with your mother's lawyer, Mr. Harrison, who actually drafted the power of attorney?" "No." "Why not?" Jennifer was silent. "Mrs. Brennan, I'll ask again. Why didn't you consult with the lawyer who created the document and would know its intended purpose?" "I didn't think I needed to." Robert showed her the emails from 4 months before the sale. "These are emails where you discuss the market value of your mother's penthouse and research how to sell property when the owner is unavailable. You sent these 4 months before the sale. Does that sound like a desperate last-minute decision?" Jennifer hesitated, her face flushing. "I was just exploring options." "Exploring options 4 months in advance," Robert repeated. "And these text messages to a real estate agent 6 weeks before your mother left for vacation, asking about power of attorney sales. Was that also just exploring options?" Yes. "And this purchase you made of tracing paper, high-quality pens, and a book about document authentication. What were those for?" "Objection," Brenner called out. "Speculation." "Your Honor, these are purchases made by the defendant that directly relate to the forgery," Robert said. "I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mrs. Brennan." Jennifer's hands were shaking now. "I don't remember buying those things." "We have your credit card statements right here," Robert said, holding up the documents. "March 15th, ordered from an online retailer, delivered to your home address. You don't remember?" Maybe Michael ordered them. "Using your credit card? Without your knowledge?" Robert's tone made it clear how absurd that sounded. "Mrs. Brennan, let me ask you directly. Did you forge your mother's signature on those sales documents?" "No." "Did you sign her name yourself?" Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. "I signed as her power of attorney representative." "That's not what I asked. Did you write out the name Margaret Torres in an attempt to make it look like your mother's signature?" Another long pause. "Yes, but I had the authority to do so." "You had the authority to forge her signature," Robert said flatly. "Let me ask you something else. When did you tell your mother about the sale?" I tried to tell her before she left for vacation, but the timing wasn't right." "So you waited until she came home and found strangers living in her house?" "I didn't know how to bring it up." "You didn't know how to bring up that you'd sold her home?" "Robert, let that hang in the air. And when she called you, upset and confused, what did you tell her?" "I tried to explain. According to phone records, that conversation lasted 4 minutes before you hung up on her. Is that trying to explain? Jennifer looked down at her hands. One more question, Robert said. After the sale, you opened an account in the Cayman Islands and transferred $60,000 into it. Why? That was for our children's future. Or was it because you knew what you'd done was illegal and you wanted to hide assets before you got caught? Objection, Brenner stood, badgering the witness. Withdrawn, Robert said. No further questions. Jennifer practically fled from the witness stand. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The confident mask she'd worn had cracked completely. Michael took the stand next. He tried to project strength, but his testimony fell apart under Robert's questioning. Yes, he had gambling debts. Yes, he'd hidden the extent of his financial problems from Jennifer's family. Yes, he'd been the one to suggest using the power of attorney to sell the penthouse. So this was your idea? Robert asked. We discussed it together, Michael said carefully. But you brought it up first. I suggested we explore our options. Options that included forging your mother-in-law's signature and stealing her home. We didn't steal anything. Robert let the statement hang there, disbelief evident on his face. When both sides rested, Judge Whitmore gave instructions to the jury. They filed out to deliberate, and we were left waiting. An hour passed. Then 2. Robert assured me this was normal, that thorough deliberation was actually a good sign, but every minute felt like an eternity. Finally, after 3 hours, the bailiff emerged. The jury has reached a verdict. We filed back into the courtroom. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Everything came down to this moment. 12 strangers were about to decide whether justice would be served or whether Jennifer would get away with what she'd done. The jury foreman, a middle-aged man in a button-down shirt, stood when the judge asked if they'd reached a verdict. We have, Your Honor. In the matter of fraud, how do you find? We find in favor of the plaintiff, Margaret Torres. I felt my breath catch. In the matter of elder abuse, how do you find? We find in favor of the plaintiff. In the matter of forgery and misuse of power of attorney, how do you find? We find in favor of the plaintiff. The courtroom seemed to spin. Robert's hand was on my shoulder, steadying me. I'd won. On every single count, I'd won. Judge Whitmore addressed Jennifer and Michael. This court finds that you, Jennifer Torres Brennan and Michael Brennan, did knowingly and willfully defraud Margaret Torres through forgery, misuse of legal documents, and elder abuse. The sale of the property located at 1847 Riverside Drive, Unit 15G, is hereby declared null and void. The property is to be returned to Mrs. Margaret Torres immediately. Jennifer was crying openly now. Michael sat rigid, his face pale. Furthermore, the judge continued, you are ordered to return all remaining proceeds from the fraudulent sale. The court calculates damages, including emotional distress, legal fees, and loss of use of property, at $120,000, to be paid to Mrs. Torres within 60 days. She paused, looking directly at Jennifer and Michael. I want to be very clear about something. What you did wasn't just illegal, it was morally reprehensible. You targeted a vulnerable family member, someone who trusted you, and you exploited that trust for financial gain. This court has seen many cases, but few as calculating and cold-hearted as this one. You should be ashamed. Jennifer's sobs echoed through the courtroom. This court is adjourned. Mrs. Torres, you'll receive documentation about reclaiming your property within 48 hours. The gavel came down. I sat there, unable to move. It was over. After weeks of fighting, of gathering evidence, of sleepless nights wondering if justice would prevail, it was finally over. Robert was talking to me, explaining next steps, but I barely heard him. All I could think about was going home, really home, to my penthouse, to my sanctuary. As we stood to leave, Jennifer approached. Her face was blotchy from crying, her eyes red and swollen. Mom, she said, her voice hoarse. Mom, please, can we talk? I looked at her. This woman who had been my baby, who I'd rocked to sleep and comforted through nightmares, who I'd taught to ride a bike and helped with homework, who I'd loved unconditionally for 40 years. And I felt nothing but disappointment. There's nothing to talk about, I said quietly. Please, I made a mistake. I know that now. I was desperate and scared, and I made terrible choices. But I'm your daughter. Doesn't that mean anything? You stopped being my daughter the moment you decided I was worth less than money. I said, "You had a choice, Jennifer. You could have asked for help. You could have been honest. Instead, you chose to betray me in the worst possible way." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I don't believe you," I said. "I think you're sorry you got caught. Sorry you have to face consequences. But I don't think you're truly sorry for what you did to me. If you were, you would have confessed the moment I called you. You would have tried to make it right. Instead, you hung up on me and called me dramatic." Jennifer had no response to that. "Goodbye, Jennifer," I said. "I hope someday you understand what you've lost." I walked away, and this time, I didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, Robert shook my hand. "Congratulations, Margaret, you did it." "We did it," I corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you." "What will you do now?" I thought about that question. What would I do now? I'd spent 6 weeks in limbo, fighting for justice. Now that I had it, what came next? "I'm going to go home," I said. "I'm going to reclaim my life, and I'm going to move forward." "And Jennifer?" I looked back at the courthouse, where Jennifer and Michael were exiting with their lawyer. They looked defeated, broken, and part of me, a very small part, felt sad for them. But mostly, I felt relieved, vindicated, free. "Jennifer made her choices," I said. "Now she gets to live with them." The couple who'd been living in my penthouse moved out within 48 hours of the court order. Robert handled most of the logistics, coordinating with their lawyer to ensure the transition went smoothly. They were understandably upset. They'd bought the place in good faith, believing they were starting a new chapter of their lives. Now they were back to square one. Their earnest money returned, but their dreams disrupted. I felt sorry for them. They were victims too, caught in the crossfire of Jennifer's choices. Robert assured me they'd be pursuing their own legal action against Jennifer and Michael to recover their losses. Good. Maybe that would drive the lesson home even further. On a Thursday morning, exactly 7 weeks after I'd returned from Colorado to find strangers at my door, I stood in front of that same door with my key in hand, the key that worked now, the lock that recognized me again. I turned the key and pushed the door open. The penthouse was empty. The couple had taken their furniture when they left. The walls were bare where their family photos had hung, but it was mine again, truly mine. I walked through each room slowly, taking it all in. The living room with those floor-to-ceiling windows I'd loved. The kitchen where I'd baked countless cookies for my grandchildren. The reading nook by the fireplace. The master bedroom where I'd slept beside Tom for 15 years before he passed. Everything was the same, and yet everything felt different. The space held different energy now. It had been violated, not by the innocent couple who'd lived here briefly, but by the betrayal that had taken it from me in the first place. I stood on the balcony, looking out at the city. The view hadn't changed. The buildings, the river in the distance, the way the afternoon sun caught the glass towers downtown. It was all exactly as I remembered, but I had changed. 7 weeks ago, I'd been a trusting mother. Someone who believed the best in people, especially family. Someone who thought that love and sacrifice would be returned in kind. Now I was someone different. Harder, maybe. More cautious, definitely, but also stronger. I'd fought for what was mine, and won. I'd stood up to people who'd tried to take advantage of me and proven that I wouldn't be pushed around. The hurt was still there, deep and aching. The betrayal didn't disappear just because I'd won in court. Every time I thought about Jennifer planning this for months, researching how to steal from me, forging my signature, I felt the wound open fresh. But alongside the hurt was something else. Pride, satisfaction, the knowledge that I'd done the right thing, even when it was hard. Even when it meant destroying what was left of my relationship with my daughter. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Torres?" A woman's voice, young and professional. "This is Sarah from Riverside Property Management. We wanted to let you know that your furniture has been moved out of storage and is being delivered tomorrow morning. Will you be available to accept delivery? My furniture." In the chaos of everything, I'd forgotten that Jennifer had put my belongings in storage when she sold the place. At least she hadn't sold those too. "Yes," I said. "I'll be here." "Wonderful. The delivery window is between 9 and noon. Is there anything else you need? No, thank you, that's all. I hung up and looked around the empty penthouse again. Tomorrow it would start to feel like home again. My couch, my bed, my dishes and books, and all the little things that made a house into a home. The moving truck arrived at 9:15 the next morning. The movers were efficient and careful, placing everything where I directed. By noon, my penthouse looked almost normal again. Not quite the same as before, but close enough that I could start to breathe easier. I spent the afternoon unpacking boxes, putting dishes in cupboards, hanging pictures on walls, small, ordinary tasks that felt monumental. Each item I put in its place was a statement. I'm home. I'm staying. No one can take this from me again. That evening, as I sat in my reading nook with a cup of tea, my phone buzzed with a text message. Jennifer. My finger hovered over the delete button. I didn't want to hear from her. Didn't want her apologies or excuses. But curiosity got the better of me. I opened the message. Mom, I know you don't want to hear from me. I understand that. But I need you to know that I realize what I did was unforgivable. Not just illegal, but morally wrong. I betrayed you in the worst way possible. I've lost everything because of it. Michael and I are getting divorced. I'm moving in with a friend because I can't afford our house anymore. The kids barely speak to me because they're ashamed of what I did. But the worst part is knowing that I destroyed my relationship with you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I took from you. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I read the message 3 times, looked for the manipulation, the guilt trip, the attempt to make me feel responsible for her consequences, but it wasn't there. The message was simple, direct, honest. She wasn't asking for anything, wasn't trying to weasel her way back into my life, just acknowledging what she'd done and accepting the consequences. I set the phone down and stared out the window. Part of me wanted to respond, to say something, anything, to bridge the enormous gap that now existed between us. She was still my daughter, no matter what she'd done. That bond didn't just disappear, but another part of me, the part that had been hurt and betrayed and dismissed, wasn't ready. Maybe would never be ready. I didn't respond to the message. Not that night, anyway. I needed time to process, time to figure out what, if anything, I wanted to say. Over the next few days, I settled back into my home, established new routines, had coffee on the balcony in the mornings, took walks in the evening. Slowly, the penthouse started to feel like mine again. Mrs. Patterson came by with a casserole and a warm hug. So glad you're home, dear. The building hasn't been the same without you. Margaret from my book club visited, bringing flowers and gossip about what I'd missed. We sat in my living room, drinking tea and talking about everything except the trial. It was exactly what I needed. But at night, when the city quieted down and I was alone with my thoughts, the reality of what I'd lost hit me. Not the penthouse. I'd gotten that back. But Jennifer, my grandchildren, the family I'd thought I had. I'd won the legal battle. I'd gotten justice. But justice didn't fill the empty chair at my dining table where Jennifer used to sit. It didn't bring back the Sunday phone calls. It didn't erase the knowledge that the person I'd loved most in the world had seen me as nothing more than a source of money. 1 week after moving back in, Jennifer sent another text. I'm in therapy, trying to understand why I made such terrible choices. The therapist says I have to take full responsibility and stop blaming circumstances. You were right about everything. I was selfish. I was cruel. I prioritized money over the person who gave me everything. I don't expect you to care, but I thought you should know I'm trying to become a better person, not for you. I know I can never make this right with you, but for my kids, so they don't grow up thinking this kind of behavior is acceptable. I read that message sitting in my reading nook, the same spot where I'd spent countless peaceful evenings before all of this happened. Jennifer was in therapy. Good. She needed it. But did that change anything for me? Did her attempts at self-improvement erase what she'd done? No, it didn't. But maybe, someday, it could be a starting point. Not for reconciliation, exactly. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again, but perhaps, eventually, for some kind of peace between us. That night, for the first time since returning from Colorado, I slept well, really well. The kind of deep, dreamless sleep that comes when you're finally safe in your own space. When I woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through my bedroom window. I lay there for a moment, listening to the familiar sounds of the building, pipes humming, distant voices, the elevator dinging. I was home. Really, truly home. The fight wasn't completely over. Jennifer and Michael still faced criminal charges. There would be more court dates, more testimony, more reminders of the betrayal. But the worst part was behind me. I had my home back. I had my dignity back. I had proven that I wouldn't be taken advantage of. As I made coffee in my kitchen, I thought about what Robert had asked me outside the courthouse. What would I do now? I'd reclaim my life, I'd said. And I'd meant it. But what did that actually look like? Did I just go back to how things were before? Pretend none of this had happened? No, I couldn't do that. I'd been fundamentally changed by this experience. I saw the world differently now, saw people differently, even saw myself differently. I was stronger than I'd known, more resilient, more willing to fight for what was right, even when it hurt. That was worth something. That was worth a lot, actually. Jennifer sent one more text that week. I heard the DA is moving forward with criminal charges. I'm not going to fight it. Whatever sentence I get, I deserve it. I just wanted you to know that. I stared at that message for a long time. Then, for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I typed a response. I hope you find peace, Jennifer. I really do. But that peace needs to come from within you, not from me. Take care of yourself, take care of your children, and learn from this. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Her response came 30 seconds later. Thank you, Mom. That's more than I deserve. And that was it. No more messages, no more attempts at contact, just a quiet acceptance of consequences and a tiny, fragile thread of connection that might, someday, lead somewhere. Or might not. And I was okay with that too. I finished my coffee and stepped out onto the balcony. The morning air was cool and fresh. The city was waking up. Life was continuing, as it always did. And I was continuing with it. Changed, yes. Scarred, absolutely. But still here, still standing, still me. That was enough. For now, it was more than enough. 3 months after the trial, I was standing in line at the grocery store when I saw them, my grandchildren, Emma, who was 12 now, and Jacob, who'd just turned 9. They were with a woman I didn't recognize, probably the friend Jennifer had mentioned moving in with. Emma saw me first. Her eyes widened, and for a moment I thought she might pretend she hadn't noticed me. But then she tugged on Jacob's sleeve and whispered something. He looked over, and his face lit up the way it used to when I'd show up at their house with cookies. "Grandma!" Jacob started toward me, but Emma grabbed his arm, holding him back. She looked uncertain, like she didn't know if approaching me was allowed. I made the decision for them. I stepped out of line and walked over. "Hello, sweetheart," I said to Emma. Then to Jacob, "You've gotten taller." "I'm almost as tall as Mom now," he said proudly. Then his face fell slightly, as if remembering that mentioning his mother might be a mistake. The woman with them introduced herself. "I'm Rachel, Jennifer's friend. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Jennifer didn't mention you might be." "It's fine," I said. "It's good to see them." Emma was staring at the floor, her expression conflicted. She was old enough to understand what had happened, at least in broad strokes, old enough to feel the weight of family fractures. "How's school?" I asked her gently. "Okay," she mumbled. Then, looking up at me with those serious eyes that reminded me so much of Jennifer at that age, she asked, "Are you mad at us?" My heart broke a little. "Oh, honey. No, I'm not mad at you. Not at all. What happened between your mom and me? That's between adults. It has nothing to do with you and Jacob. Mom cries a lot now," Jacob offered innocently. "She says she did something really bad to you." Rachel looked uncomfortable. "Kids, maybe we should." "It's all right," I said. I crouched down so I was at Jacob's level. "Your mom made some mistakes, big ones, but that doesn't mean she's a bad person. It means she has to learn and grow, and it doesn't mean I stopped caring about you two. Can we still visit you sometimes?" Emma asked, hope creeping into her voice. "Like we used to?" I hesitated. The practical part of me knew that maintaining a relationship with the grandchildren meant having some contact with Jennifer. It meant potentially opening myself up to more hurt. But looking at their faces, I couldn't say no. I'd like that, I said. If your mom is okay with it. Really? Jacob's face broke into a huge grin. We exchanged numbers with Rachel, who promised to talk to Jennifer about arranging a visit. As they walked away, Emma looked back once and waved. I waved back, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, exactly, but maybe the beginning of something that could eventually lead there. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I checked the video monitor, I saw Jennifer standing in the hallway, alone. She looked nervous, shifting her weight from foot to foot. I almost didn't open the door, but curiosity won out. I unlocked it but left the chain on, opening it just enough to see her clearly. "Mom," she said, "I'm sorry for showing up unannounced. I know I should have called first, but I have something for you, and I wanted to bring it in person." She held up a small box, wrapped simply in brown paper. "You don't need to give me anything," I said. "I know, but please, just take it. I'm not asking to come in. I'm not asking for anything else. Just please, take this." Against my better judgment, I unlatched the chain and opened the door wider. Jennifer handed me the box. She looked thinner than the last time I'd seen her in court. Tired. There were strands of gray in her hair that hadn't been there before. "I'm not staying," she said quickly. "I just wanted you to have this, and to tell you that Emma and Jacob asked about visiting you. If you're willing, I'd like that to happen. Not because I'm trying to manipulate my way back into your life, but because they miss you, and you were always a wonderful grandmother. They shouldn't lose that because of what I did." I held the box but didn't open it. I ran into them at the grocery store. "They seem like they're managing okay." "They're resilient," Jennifer said. "More resilient than I am, apparently." She tried to smile, but it came out shaky. "I've been going to therapy twice a week, working through a lot of things, understanding why I made the choices I did, not to excuse them, just to understand them so I don't make them again." "That's good," I said, and I meant it. "The criminal trial is next month," she said quietly. "My lawyer thinks I'll get 18 months, probably serve 9 with good behavior. I'm scared, but I'm also relieved, in a weird way. Like I need to pay this debt before I can move forward." I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me still wanted her to suffer for what she'd done. But another part of me, the mother part, that never fully goes away no matter what happens, hurt for her. "I should go," Jennifer said. "Thank you for talking to me, for considering letting the kids visit. It means more than you know." She turned to leave, then paused. "Mom, I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry, not because I got caught, not because I'm facing consequences, but because I hurt you, because I betrayed your trust, because I treated you like you were disposable. You deserve so much better from me." Her voice cracked on the last words. She didn't wait for a response, just walked away toward the elevator. I closed the door and stood there for a moment, holding the box. Then, I went to my living room and sat down to open it. Inside was a photo album, old, with worn leather binding. I recognized it immediately. It was the album my mother had kept, full of photos from my childhood. I'd given it to Jennifer years ago, thinking she might want to show her children where their family came from. I opened it carefully. Photos of me as a little girl, my parents, long gone now, my grandparents, family gatherings from 60 years ago, and tucked into the front page was a note in Jennifer's handwriting. "Mom, I found this when I was packing up the house. I wanted you to have it back. Not because I don't want it, but because it belongs with you. These are your roots, your history, the foundation of everything you built. I took so much from you. I can't give it all back, but I can give you this. Love, Jennifer." I sat there with the album in my lap, looking at a photo of myself at 5 years old, standing between my parents in front of our tiny apartment. We didn't have much back then, but we had each other. We had love. We had trust. That little girl in the photo had grown up believing that hard work and honesty and treating people right would be rewarded. That family meant something. that trust was sacred. Jennifer's actions had shaken that belief, had made me question everything I thought I knew about the people closest to me. But sitting there with that album, with the tangible proof of where I'd come from and what I'd overcome, I realized something. Jennifer's betrayal hadn't destroyed me. It had hurt me, yes. Changed me, absolutely. But I was still here, still standing, still the same person at my core who'd built a life from nothing. And maybe, just maybe, there was room in my life for boundaries and for connection, for holding people accountable and for showing mercy, for protecting myself and for leaving the door open, just a crack, for the possibility of healing. I wasn't ready to forgive Jennifer completely. Might never be, but I could accept her apology. I could allow my grandchildren into my life. I could acknowledge that she was trying to become better, even if that didn't erase what she'd done. That evening, I called Rachel and arranged for Emma and Jacob to visit the following weekend. Then I sent Jennifer a text, brief but sincere. "Thank you for the album. It means a lot. The kids can visit Saturday at 10. Her response came quickly. "Thank you, Mom, really, thank you." I set the phone down and looked around my penthouse, my home that I'd fought for and won back. It wasn't just a place anymore. It was a symbol, a reminder that I was stronger than I'd known, that I could face betrayal and come out the other side intact. Justice had cost me my relationship with my daughter, at least for now. It had cost me my illusions about family loyalty being unconditional. It had cost me my innocence, my trust, my belief that love was always enough. But it had given me something too. Dignity, self-respect, the knowledge that I could stand up for myself when it mattered most. The proof that actions have consequences, even for people we love. And maybe, if we were both willing to do the work, it had given Jennifer and me a chance at something new. Not what we had before, that was gone forever, but perhaps something more honest, more real, built on truth instead of assumptions. I didn't know if that would happen, couldn't guarantee it, but for the first time since coming home from Colorado all those months ago, I felt like it was possible. And possibility, I was learning, was sometimes enough. Saturday morning arrived with sunshine streaming through my balcony windows. I'd been up since 6, cleaning the penthouse and preparing for Emma and Jacob's visit. Cookies in the oven, their favorite. Hot chocolate ready to make. Board games pulled from the closet where they'd sat unused for months. At exactly 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find both children standing there with Rachel. Emma looked nervous, but Jacob bounced on his toes with barely contained excitement. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. Jacob rushed past me into the living room. "Everything looks the same." "Well, mostly the same." "Is that a new lamp?" "Same lamp," I said, laughing. "Just moved to a different spot." Emma entered more slowly, taking everything in. She walked to the balcony doors and looked out at the view. "I miss this place," she said softly. "I used to love coming here." "You're welcome here anytime," I told her. "That hasn't changed." Rachel lingered at the door. "I can come back in a few hours, say 1 o'clock?" "That works perfectly." After she left, I spent the morning with my grandchildren the way I used to. We played games, we talked about school and friends and their favorite shows. Jacob told me elaborate stories about his soccer team. Emma showed me photos on her phone of an art project she was working on. It felt normal, almost like before, except we all knew it wasn't quite the same. There was an awareness now, a carefulness in how we spoke. Certain topics went unmentioned. Jennifer's name came up only once, when Jacob asked if I thought his mom would be okay. "Yes," I told him honestly. "I think she will be. It might take time, but your mom is strong. She'll get through this." "Are you still mad at her?" Emma asked, her eyes searching my face. I thought about that question. Was I still mad? Yes, on some level. The betrayal still stung. The hurt hadn't completely healed, but the sharp, burning anger had faded into something else. Something more like sadness and disappointment. "I'm working on not being mad," I said. "It's a process, but I'm getting there." Emma seemed satisfied with that answer. When Rachel came to pick them up at 1, Jacob hugged me tightly. "Can we come back next weekend?" "We'll see," I said, "but I'd like that." After they left, I stood on my balcony and looked out at the city. 4 months ago, I'd returned from vacation to find my entire life upended. 4 months ago, I'd felt helpless and betrayed and lost. Now, standing in my home that I'd fought for and won back, I felt different. The experience had stripped away something I'd carried my whole life. The belief that being kind and trusting was always enough, that love could overcome anything, that family would never truly hurt you. Those beliefs were gone, and in their place was something harder but also more honest, an understanding that trust had to be earned and protected, that love without boundaries was dangerous, that family ties didn't excuse bad behavior. It was a painful lesson, but it was also a necessary one. I thought about the woman I'd been before Colorado. She would have forgiven Jennifer immediately, would have convinced herself that family peace was more important than justice, would have swallowed her hurt to avoid conflict. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who knew her worth, who wouldn't accept being treated as less than she deserved, who understood that holding people accountable wasn't cruel, it was necessary. I liked this new version of myself better. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Emma and Jacob visited every other weekend. I joined a new book club, one where I made friends who knew nothing about my past drama. I started taking painting classes, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for, and I started looking forward instead of backward. Jennifer's criminal trial happened in early December. She pleaded guilty to all charges. The judge sentenced her to 15 months, with eligibility for parole after 8. It was less than it could have been, but more than enough to make the point. When I heard the news, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Relief that it was over, sadness that it had come to this, and a small, quiet hope that maybe this would be the wake-up call Jennifer needed to truly change. She sent me one final letter before reporting to serve her sentence. "Mom, I'm about to begin paying my debt to society, but the debt I owe you can never be fully repaid. You gave me life, raised me, supported me, loved me. And I threw all of that away for money. There's no excuse for that, no justification. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I hope that someday, years from now, I can show you through my actions that I've learned from this, that I've become someone worthy of being called your daughter again. Until then, thank you for letting Emma and Jacob see you. Thank you for not punishing them for my mistakes. You've always been a better person than I deserved. With love and regret, Jennifer." I read that letter 3 times, then put it in a drawer. I wasn't ready to respond. Might never be. But I kept it because someday, maybe, it would be evidence of where we'd been and how far we'd come. Christmas approached, and for the first time in years, I didn't dread it. I invited Emma and Jacob to spend Christmas Eve with me. We decorated cookies and watched old movies and opened presents in front of my fireplace. It was different from the big family gatherings we used to have, but it was good. Real, honest. As the new year arrived, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the fight, the victory, the slow, painful process of rebuilding. A year ago, if someone had told me my daughter would steal my home and I'd end up taking her to court, I would have said it was impossible, unthinkable. But it had happened, and I'd survived it. More than survived it. I'd conquered it. I'd learned that I was stronger than I knew. That I could face the worst kind of betrayal and come out intact. That justice, while difficult and painful, was worth fighting for. I'd also learned that life doesn't always give you the ending you want. Sometimes the people you love most disappoint you in ways you never imagined. Sometimes relationships break and can't be fully repaired. Sometimes the price of standing up for yourself is loneliness. But I'd rather be lonely and dignified than surrounded by people who didn't respect me. As I stood on my balcony on New Year's Day, watching the sun rise over the city, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the naive peace of ignorance, but the hard-won peace of someone who'd been through fire and emerged stronger. I thought about what came next. More art classes, maybe some traveling, possibly volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping other elderly people who'd been taken advantage of. Using my experience to protect others from what I'd been through. The future stretched out before me, full of possibility. Not the future I'd imagined a year ago, but a future nonetheless, and I was ready for it. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to my story. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to choose between family peace and standing up for yourself? How did you handle it? Drop your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe for more real-life stories. Remember, standing up for yourself isn't selfish, setting boundaries isn't cruel, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold people accountable for their actions. I learned that the hard way, but I learned it well. And now, at 72 years old, I'm finally living life on my own terms, in my own home, with my dignity intact and my head held high. That penthouse Jennifer tried to sell, it wasn't just a building. It represented everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed for, everything I was. And when she tried to take it, she learned something important. You don't mess with a woman who's spent her whole life fighting for what's hers, because she'll fight back, and she'll win. Trust me on that.